welcome to the tutorial. Last time we went over how to get set up to make a bunch of section cuts of these hands. Show you a 3D version of this. And we're going to cut these hands up into a bunch of little slices so that we can print them out on a CNC, stack them together, and get the profile of this 3D shape. This is a process that's often used for making representations of topography and maps and 3D maps and contour lines, so on and so forth. But I'm using this technique to essentially prototype this this set of hands here. So going back to our top view, what we did in the last video is we got ourselves all set up. We made some layers here, and we did our first section cut of the zero plane at 0. And so in today's video, I'm going to go over some easy ways to get this traced out and the process of how we start essentially producing a bunch of these slices. So what ends up happening is, like, this first one, it seems pretty straightforward, but you get into a process where you're making like 40 or 50 or 100 slices or whatever it is, and there's a lot of steps to follow, and each step is crucial and has to come in a certain order in order to keep everything organized, and essentially the real trick is to keep all of these slices planar, even though we're moving our planes up and up and up as we slice. So anyways, so let's get into it. The first thing you want to do is, after you make your slice, you want to make your slice on 2D cuts. This is where we're doing all of our section cutting and slicing. So once we make the slice, you want to switch off of there and go to hand trace, because that's where we're going to trace the hand. And then you want to lock the 2D cuts layer so that you can't alter it at all. Okay, and then what we want to do is we want to come in here and we want to make sure some of our snaps are on. Those look good. So we're going to select a polyline here, and I'm just going to start tracing from a point. Let's see here. So we go, and then this is very important. We got to make sure that these traces stay planar. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to use our planar snap for one, and for two, we're going to make sure that the section cut is always at the same level and the same plane as the plane that we're drawing on. That will ensure that you're not clicking to points that are not coplanar, and you're drawing lines that are not or curves that are not coplanar. So I'm just going to sort of go around like this. You can use your smart track snaps to interpolate points and intersections and so on and so forth. So we're just going to kind of come around and trace this out. I'm going to see where things are going over here. Where does this go? This goes over here. Okay, so I'm going to come to this outside line. And if you right click your mouse and hold it, you can drag around, so you don't have to zoom in and out all the time. So Rhino really quickly gets the idea of what you're trying to do and is great at smart snapping, what they call smart tracking. But you have to be really careful when you have curves that are really close to each other, or points that you can't necessarily see very well. It may smart track you in a dumb way, so to speak. So anyways, this is sort of the process. Just go around and I'm going to, let's see, where do those meet? Those meet right there. So we're just about done with this, and all we got to do is come here, and now our curve has been made, and we should have one planar curve that goes all the way around here. Perfect. So that's our first trace. Now we can come up here and do this one really quick. So let's just do it again. Do the same process here, leaving out, of course, any of these details that you do not want in your final prototype. This can really come in handy when you're when you're dealing with shapes and sizes that are, or not shapes and sizes, but when you're dealing with profiles that just won't transfer at the scale that you're working in, it doesn't really make sense to include a bunch of work or do a bunch of work and include a bunch of parts that don't end up meaning anything. So right here, we want this to end on the y-axis, and since we know that this project is centered on the y-axis, I'm going to go to grid snap, and even if it weren't, we'd be able to snap to something here that's in the middle. But so we're going to do that grid snap there, and this is the process. So it can be pretty monotonous, but you'll see really quickly how we're able to how to shorten the trace time by using previous traces. Alright, so now we got 2 traces, right? That's great. So what we want to do is I actually want to take these curves, I want to trim them because I want to get rid of this. Okay, so I can't do that. Let's cancel and let's explode that curve because that was one curve. And now we can just select this line and delete it. Great, and the reason why I did that is because when I mirror this, I want these points to meet up, and I want there to not be a line here. I want this to be all one piece. So what I can do now is I can select all of this line work here. I can type in mirror, okay, and it says, select the plane. So I could either draw the plane with grid snap on that I know is the y-axis, or I could just simply press this button over here that says y-axis, and it does it for me. And now I have, as you can see, all this line work here that's mirrored on both axes. So this is great. This is the first trace level. This is the first bit of tracing that we wanted to do. So now what we can do is, using the same trick that we did to move this down here, we're going to move this over. So I want to copy this and I want to move it to the left. So I'm going to hit Option or Alt and click on the arrow, and I'm going to go in a negative 250 feet. It just seems like the standard number I'm using, so we'll just stick with that. Okay, great. And now this is where we're going to build our 3D extrusions. So since this is already selected, this makes it really easy for me to go to solid here and extrude planar curve straight. Great, now I'm extruding a planar curve, and I just need to go to a view where I can see where I'm extruding it, and I know that each one of these is going to be 12 inches. So let's talk about that really quick and how I know that. So this is a part that's up to your preference or whatever. I decided to make a cut every 1 foot in this model, and that means that every slice represents 1 foot of depth in this model. So because of that, I'm going to extrude all of these curves that I draw one foot so that I can make a representation of what these profiles are going to look like when they're stacked up. Okay, so that being said, I'm going to take this this extrusion now. We can see that it's an extrusion by coming over here, and we can see that now this thing has depth. Great, we just made a solid. So I'm going to go back to top view. I'm going to select our extrusion, and I'm going to put that on 3D hand traces. So now, and I'm going to lock that. So now we can't do anything with that. Wonderful. So now I'll go over to this again, and what we want to do is we want to take our line work and we want to leave it here so that we get a representation of what we just drew for the next cut. But we also want to copy it over over to the right here so that we can start making a stockpile of all these slices to cut. So what we're going to have essentially is we're going to have a big long line over here of all the slices we make in order, so that when we go to put them on sheets, we can number them easily. And then over here, we're going to have a 3D representation of what all these slices look like stacked up, so that if we need to make edits or changes to the slices, we can see, how we want to do that, or just get an idea of what this is going to end up looking like. So I'm going to Option or Alt click again to copy it in the other direction. So we'll go 250 feet in that direction. Wonderful. Okay, now let's just get into this to make sure that we are we are doing this properly. So once we move it over here, we want to do something called box edit. So we type in box edit, and what this does is it shows you all kinds of information about what's going on with your object. So this says we got 36 objects selected. Okay, that's great. So let's actually take this and let's join. Somehow they're telling me that that's one closed curve. I don't believe it. But okay, now these are all great. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to select these, and we want to make sure that they are at 0. We want them to be all the way on the ground, because that's our plane that we're going to work in for cutting, and we want to make sure that all of our slices end up on the same plane. So in order to do that, we use this little box edit tool, which is amazing. So the thing that is really easy to get messed up on is to adjust the size of the object here, and that is something you don't want to do, not for this process. What we want to adjust is the position of the object. So currently we got an x of 3000, a y of negative 3422.58, and we got a z of 0. So that means that it is already flat and on the ground because z is 0. If z were not 0, we would make it 0. So say z were 250 for whatever reason. We hit apply. The only way, so if you hit enter, that's not going to do anything. And when you use box edit, I know it's kind of annoying, but it also makes sure that you're not making drastic changes to your objects on accident. So you have to hit apply. So now that just moved this. If we look at back here, that just moved that up 250 inches. So now that plane is there. Where we want it though is we want that plane to be at 0. So we're going to type in 0. It gives us a preview of where it's going down here. And we hit apply, and there we go. Now it's down there. So that's exactly what we want. So let's go to top view, and let's execute the next stage of processes. So, and we'll get the full range of operations here. So okay, we got this here. That's great. It's at 0. Wonderful. So now we're gonna go back over here, and we're gonna select this cut that we just made. Now we want to make sure that this cut is the same level as our section cut. So we just made a cut at 0, and I know that we're going to make a cut every 12 inches. So I'm going to raise this above the z-axis by 12 inches. So make sure we're under position here. So we're under position. I'm going to go over here with the object I want to move selected, and I'm going to type in 12 and hit apply. Okay, so now this is at 12 inches. Wonderful. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this first section cut by going up to 2D cuts, which unlocks it, because that's where that cut exists. We're going to lock our hand traces so we don't erase our hand traces. And we just hit delete and see our hand traces left over. Okay, so now that we deleted that, we're going to go up here and we're going to select our section cut plane, which I just did here. And we can see that that's at 0. Where we want that to be actually is at 12, because we're going to make our next cut. So we type in 12, we hit apply. Wonderful. Now let's do our section cut. So we select all of this, type in section, hit enter, and now we go to the back here, and now we can see that our section cut plane here is 1 foot higher than it used to be. So now we select that line. Wonderful. And then we hit enter, and that gives us a section cut. And beautiful, like what's so beautiful about this process is Rhino gives you a gumball that is, that's being used for all of the objects that were just created in the section cut. And so let's move this down. We're going to do a negative 250 feet, just like before. And now these are in the exact same position, centered right over each other, so that we can make our adjustments and traces and everything just as we did before, but with the line work that we just made existing. So it makes things a lot faster. So now at this point, what we want to do is we want to, first of all, just still make sure that this is right. So we look at our box edit here, and it says 12 inches. Great. Okay. So now we switch over to hand traces. We lock the 2D cut or the section cut. We make sure that our hand trace is at 12. It is. Okay, good. So now we can come in here with our hand trace selected, and we can start adjusting. We could start adjusting this trace to be more of what we want. And I find that the best way to do that is just to, with all these. Well, first of all, we know we're going to mirror this new trace over here. So let's get rid of that and just delete that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to, let's see, what have we got here? We're going to select this, and that shows us where the previous slice was. So with that selected, we can hit F10, and that'll turn on the control points, and we can just start to manipulate the control points to make this tracing a better representation of what this new section cut shows. And conversely, if you're not comfortable doing it this way, you can also just retrace it every time, which is, truth be told, which is how I did it the first time. Okay, and so the issue with this is, like, if everything has to be perfectly lined up, you can see, like, this is not perfectly lined up here. So if that's crucial, then you're probably going to want to use snaps, and you're going to want to, let's turn grid snap off and get more accurate without that. Probably going to want to turn off snaps and get in here and actually trace it, draw it. But anyways, this is good enough for me for the work that I'm doing here. So and we can just sort of play with this. We can turn 2D cuts on and off to see if there's anything that we're missing, or if there's anything that we want to include, or so on and so forth. So let's do that again. Okay, wonderful. So I think that's good enough for that part. Now let's go up here and see what we want to change up here. So with this highlighted, I hit F10 to show me my control points. And now I can sort of move these around. So this thing wants to go this way. These ones want to go this way. And I can just manipulate these as I need to or want to to get this to be a better trace of this section. And this is, to me, this is a lot easier than going through and trying to retrace it every single time. To me, that would be a bit much, but that's exactly how I did it the first time. So it's not out of the question. It takes a lot more time to do. And if you need like I said, if you need a perfect trace, then honestly, the best thing to do would be to spend some time with using snaps and just actually like retracing the drawing, retracing it with snaps, like I did the first one. Okay, so that's pretty good. We want to do something here and attach a line from here to here. I'll show you why in a sec. And then what we want to do is I'm going to turn these control points off. So go edit, control points off. And then I'm going to select everything up here, and I'm going to trim because I want to get rid of all this business. Okay, all of that is gone, and then I also want to get rid of that line just like before, and we select done, and then take all this business here and mirror it again. Mirror, enter. Okay, great. And we want the y-axis once again. So there we got all of our stuff mirrored. Select everything, join it together, and then there's our next slice. So what we want to do is we want to take this slice and we're going to Alt or Option click. We're going to go negative 250 feet. So we get over here, which is exactly what we want. And then we're going to extrude this. So we're going to extrude a planar curve because that's what we have here is a planar curve. Go to our back view so we know which way we're extruding. We want that to be 12 inches as we discussed before. Go back to top view, select everything, and make sure it's on 3D hand traces. If you're planning to manipulate this later, I suggest grouping it before you're putting it on the hand trace layer. That way each layer, each slice here, extruded slice is a group that can be manipulated. Otherwise you have to grab all these pieces and eventually there's quite a few things going on here. So that is wonderful. Now what we want to do is we want to go here and we select this, okay, and we're on 12, okay, wonderful. So what we want to do is we want to move this over. Let's move over 250 feet. It's important to keep this the same every time so that you can easily manipulate these pieces and get them to stack up perfectly on top of each other. If you don't use the same numbers every time, lining them up is extremely difficult and is guaranteed to produce errors. Okay, so now that we have that, we can move this over. Again, we're going to Option Alt click and Option or Alt, whatever it is. And then we're going to move it 250 feet in that direction. And this is where you start to see like, okay, now we have this selected, it's already selected, and we can look at the box edit and we see it's 12 inches. We want this to be at 0 here. We want all of these things, everything right of this, we want to be at 0. So we're going to type in 0, hit apply. Okay, and there's our next slice. Wonderful. So let's just go through this one more time. So we're going to move this up again. So now it's going to go up to 24. Apply. So now that's at 24, great, and we're going to go back to 2D cuts. We're going to lock our hand trace. We're going to select this 2D cut, and we're going to delete it, and so we're left with our hand trace. And we're going to go over here to our cut plane, and we're going to move that up 12 inches. So now it's at 24. Apply. If you don't want to do it this way, you can also just come over here with your cut plane selected, and you can use the gumball to move it. 12 inches up or whatever, however much you want to move it. Just click the gumball and then type in 12 and enter, and that'll move it up 12 again. I'm going to undo that though because we don't want it up that high yet. Okay, so we're at 24. Good. So we come to top view here. Let's select everything and let's type in section. Go back to back view, and it's going to ask us where we want that, and we want it right there. That's great, and we hit enter to give us our section, and then we move our section down. So we're going to click the gumball, negative 250 feet, press enter. Okay, good, and then so we're at 24. Just going to keep checking this. So we're at 24. Wonderful. Now I'm going to deselect that. I'm going to go back to hand traces, lock the 2D cut layer, select this. This is our hand trace. Okay, now we're ready to modify this if we need to. So what am I going to do? I'm going to turn control points on by pressing F10, and then I'm going to move these just like before. I don't really care that much how nice this is because I've already done this before, and this is just for demonstration purposes. So I will just go through and do this just like this. Maybe it's just as fast as to do this right here instead of all that other business. Some of these traces are going to be faster, some are going to be slower. It just depends on the detail that you're working with and the detail that you want to carry over and how patient you are, and so on and so forth. How picky the client is, whatever it may be. All right, so now we're going to turn those control points off. And wonderful, we already have our next slice. So we just select this whole thing. We're going to hit Option or Alt, and we're going to go negative 250 feet. Wonderful, and then we're going to extrude that just like before. Extrude planar curve straight, and we're going to go back, and we're going to say go up 12 inches. Done. Then we go to the top view. select all this, move it to 3D hand traces, and now we can't select anything over here, and we're going to move this stuff over. It's important to keep these in order too. So we got 1, 2, this will be 3. So let's see what we're going to do. We're going to just move this over 250 feet. And then we're going to select this, and we're going to copy it over by pressing Option, click 250 feet again. Okay, now this is a really important part. See, we're at 24 on our Z. We want this Z to be 0. Apply. There we go. And now if we select all these, they should all say 0. Great. If one of them is off, then this number will be a weird number. It won't be 12 or 24, 36 or whatever. It'll be some number, some average of however high all of these are. For example, if we unlock 3D hand traces and we select this, it's 18 is the current height. So that's what we got there. So let's go to perspective and maybe you can see what's happening with these profiles. See, they start to stack up like this, and they start to create a representation of the model that we're attempting to prototype. So what I would say next is I want to show you what the finished product looks like. So let's go over here, click this screen. This is the finished product. We'll get rid of box edit. This is all of the layers stacked up, all of them sliced and stacked up. So let's go. You can see that my cut plane here is at the very top. It's at the very top of the thumbs. I moved it up in increments of 1 foot all the way up through here. And then this is the very last cut, as you can see. And then if we go to top view, you look at, here's the very last profile. That's the very last profile I made. I moved it. I need to move it over here actually still, so this is good that I came here because I need to finish that last trace, that very last trace. See, those parts would have never got cut. So what I'm going to do is select all of this, and you get to see how fun this is, see how many slices I actually got here. There's all those, and then I'll shift, select, add these. I'm just going to move everything over. In this model I use 300 feet instead of 250. So that's what I'll do. I'll move that 300 feet over, and I'll come to here, and I'll select this. I'll move this Alt copy or Option copy, Option click I mean, and I'm going to go over 300 feet, and then I'm going to type in box edit, and make sure that I'm at 0. See, when you type in box edit, it first comes up, it's going to be on the size area. Don't mess with this unless you know that you want to. But I would not mess with this stuff. What I would mess with is this right here. So 432, that was the last slice. We started at 12, and we got up to 432. So, you know, divide 432 by 12, that's how many slices I made. I actually made 1 extra for a ground plane, but that's not really important. So what we want this to be is 0. Apply, ta-da, and now all of this stuff should be at 0. Oh, it's not. So let's see, where do we have a problem? One of these is not at 0. This one is not at 0. It's at 420. So what we want to do is make it 0. Apply. Okay, great. So now it's at 0. And we can just keep doing this if we wanted to. How about I just move that? Zero. Yes. Okay. So that's what I mean by it's really important to, because once you get into the process of doing this, you go pretty fast, and then if you forget one of these steps, it sort of messes everything up. But if we wanted to, we could select all this stuff here, and it says 0. That's wonderful, and we already know that we just made these ones 0. So I'm gonna check. Let's check just in case, because it never hurts to check. Wonderful. So that's what we got, and then I'll come over here and just select this plane and delete it, and we can see that their hands are still there. So that's it for this video. I hope that you found this useful, and please please subscribe and stay tuned for future videos. Next time we're going to talk about how to lay all of these pieces out, how to number them and lay them out onto a sheet for cutting. All right, thanks a lot.